Let us now continue to look at the 37 practices of Bodhisattva. Now we're going to look at the 4 aspects of the training. The first one is examining one's confusion so that it may be dispelled. When not examining one's own confusion, it is possible to have the appearance of a Dharma practitioner while doing what is not Dharma. Therefore, it is the practice of Bodhisattvas to relinquish their own confusion through continuously examining it. As a Mahayana practitioner, we need to constantly examine our own faults. If we do not do so, what is the result of it? It is that as a Mahayana practitioner, we will lack all qualities such as learnedness and righteousness, lacking good qualities, and on top of that, not being aware of their faults, even though they may be the size of Mount Meru. They will nevertheless think of themselves as being Dharma practitioner. It is simply that they would have appearance of a Dharma practitioner, but not practicing Dharma. Indeed, we may appear to be practitioners. I think there are lots of people who are not practicing Dharma, not making observation of our own faults, and have grasping towards protecting the loved ones and attacking the enemies. Those are all the non-dharmic activities. So we ourselves need to closely observe our 3 gates so that we can relinquish all of those previously stated faults. It is said in purposeful expressions, I should examine what is appropriate to do and what is not. From the way of the Bodhisattva, checking at all times what I am doing. In this way, should I examine my faults? In the Tibetan translation, it means that as a mundane being, we need to make observation and examination of whatever we're doing. You need to constantly check your own behavior and your own thoughts. You need to examine your own thoughts and your own actions. So after today's class, I hope that you can look inwardly and you can look at your own faults instead of looking at others' faults. I hope after today's class you would no longer look at the faults of the others. In fact, if we were to look at the faults of ours, we would be able to see that our faults are far worse than that of the others. At the times when we study the 37 practices of a Bodhisattva, we need to investigate ourselves. We need to observe ourselves. Maybe during my class, you feel like I am scolding you every day during the lessons, but I'm not really particularly talking about one person or another. It is really just our habitual tendencies from the past. So over here it says that it is very important to give up our faults by means of thinking them over and investigating them. In particular, when we ourselves have entered the great vehicle, we have already given rise to bodhicitta. We need to examine our confusion and then give it up so that we may prevent others from losing faith. The wise ones would be very careful with their own activities so that others won't generate wrong view. But the foolish ones would do exactly the opposite. That is why over here it says that it is quite important to give up the wrong actions, to give up our confusion so that we may prevent others from losing their faith. We need to protect the others' faith. We need to contemplate the result of our actions so that it won't hurt the faith of the others, it won't harm the view of the others. If you were to do whatever you wish, this is quite a wrong action or a foolish action. In the sutra requested by inexhaustible intelligence, the following is said, there is one Dharma that condenses the entire great vehicle. there is just one Dharma. What is it? It is that one must protect all sentient beings through contemplating one's own confusion. We need to protect the minds of all sentient beings. Since all of you claim that you're practitioners of the great vehicle, you're the Mahayana practitioner, then you need to investigate and make observation of your own actions and see whether you're protecting the sentient beings or not. Don't be blinded by yourself. Don't look at the other's faults, nor talk about the other's faults. But the mundane beings somehow tend to get very interested and very talented at talking about others' faults, but not so much when it comes to the faults of their own. The great masters of the past are exactly the opposite than the ordinary beings, that is us. They would investigate their own faults. They would not point fingers to the others. We ourselves are completely different than the great masters of the past. We would say that we ourselves are as perfect as the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, but the others are the source of all faults. So over here it points out that to protect the minds of the others is really important. Protect the minds of all sentient beings is the duty of the Mahayana practitioners. In the Sutra of the Authentic Compilation of All Phenomena, says that protecting others from losing faith means observing discipline. From Individual Liberation of Bodhisattva says that having investigated that which makes the world feel distrust, you should eliminate it. At times of making observation, you need to make sure that your activities, your behavior would generate faith or help the worldly beings to generate faith. Moreover, from the way of the Bodhisattva, when you get rid of your toothbrushes and spittle, you should conceal them well. And at a wide place, an open place, if you were to market and urinate at public places and at a water spring, all such as that which provokes distrust in this world should be inquired into and, when observed, abandoned. Whatever kinds of behavior that would give rise to wrong views within the mundane beings, we need to inquire, we need to know, we need to observe, so that we can avoid those kinds of behaviors, and then we can abandon those kinds of behaviors. According to the Compendium of Trainings, it says that one should abandon fruitless activity. It continues to teach elaborately on how to give up the factors that prevent benefit and good results for others, as well as the causal factors that may cause others to lose faith. Now, in terms of the Compendium of Trainings, this particular text has a few different translations. For example, in the Chinese translation, there is the essence of the collections of trainings of bodhisattvas. Within the Great Dictionary of Buddhism, it is stated that this particular text collects all the trainings taught by Shantideva, and it is a collection of that. In the Tibetan and Chinese dictionary, it says that the translation is Compendium of Trainings. Khenpo Tsotrang Lodro is currently giving teachings on that. Maybe he won't be able to finish or complete the teaching of that particular text this year. However, this text is really important. There is the Chinese translation, and I think whenever you have time, you should read into it. It is rather quite a long text. Over here, it says that it continues to teach elaborately on how to give up the factor that prevent benefit and good result for others, as well as the causal factors that may cause others to lose faith. From the same source, at all times, one who is not wild but gentle will speak at the right time and pleasantly. That individual will be liked by all the fortunate beings who will fully trust his words. Therefore, the benefits of having examined one's own faults and abandoned them are that others develop faith and trust your words. So your words would be trustworthy if you were to observe your own mind, observe your own faults, instead of speak of the faults of the others. If you were to speak of the faults of others, you would sometimes receive feedback from the others saying that, oh, this is not a good act. Sometimes you may not receive that kind of feedback, but people are very clear about what you're doing or how you are. And they would be able to see through the kinds of faults that you inhabit by yourself. Furthermore, from the same source, it says that as to the faults of provoking, distrusting others, but it states that, but if his conduct is not flawless, the world will look down on the Bodhisattva, which is the sprouts of the Buddhas. This is like a fire covered with ashes, whereby sentient beings will be fried in hell. It means that if one were to speak of the faults of the others, then it is like how the fire that's covered by the ash would burn the others as well as self. Though it may not seem to be very harmful as it is covered by ash, that if you were to look at the faults of the others, you would not see the direct result of that fault or direct result of that negative activity or action, but eventually it would be harmful to yourself as well as others. This is taught in the context of protecting others from harm. Today we are specifically talking about this speaking of the faults of the others. Sometimes I notice that people really like to speak of the faults of the others and think that they themselves are perfect. If we were to point our fingers to the others, in fact, it creates great faults, great negativity. Some of the people may perform all kinds of seemingly virtuous deeds. However, the way that they criticize others is really the contrary than the genuine practice of a Mahayana Buddhist. In this way, if your speech or action were to lead to wrong view or the loss of faith in the Dharma, then you would become, you would carry that debt of that karmic debt. If a bodhisattva does not protect his body speech from the faulty behavior, others will lose faith. He will be looked down upon, and when others then proceed to the lower realms, he himself will be at fault. The same source says that therefore it is taught by the victorious one in the supreme jeweled cloud that whatever creates distrust in sentient beings should carefully be relinquished. Thus it explains elaborately, quoting the sutra. Moreover, Lord Atisha says, do not investigate the faults of others, but examine your own faults and get rid of them like bad blood. flood. He also said that one's own faults should be proclaimed. We need to look at our own faults. It is really that we have not really adopted those teachings into our actions. I've noticed that lots of our fellow practitioners, sometimes you would still habitually look at others' faults. You would still point it out, sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly. But speaking it or not, making an observation of others' faults as a Buddhist, especially Mahayana Buddhist, that is indeed quite inadequate. So we need to make observation of our own faults. Yesterday or day before, we talked about the practice of patience. For the same reason, we can practice upon how much of the faults that we notice of the others and how much of the faults of the others that we speak of within maybe a month or a year. Maybe you can write it in your journal. In your journal, you don't necessarily to praise yourself at all times. As a mundane being, we don't have too much wonderful qualities to praise about. So instead of that, I think it is the best for you to make a self-reflection upon how much mistakes that you have made. I also thought or made a self-contemplation. I thought that sometimes I would speak of maybe the inappropriate ways of wearing your monastic robes or your monastic scarf and so on. But this is not because I want to look for faults of you, rather as someone who is at the position of managing the Sangha, I have to point out the inappropriate appearances or behavior. Other than people at certain positions, that you definitely have to make management of the whole Sangha, or you have to maintain a sense of order of the Sangha. I think it is the best for you not to look for the faults of the others. If you were to look for the faults of the others without the management team inviting you to do so, or you're not at certain status or certain position to do so, I think maybe your mind has been controlled under a demonic force or negative force. I think you being here is not that meaningful anymore because you're simply creating negative deeds. Then, according to Juntunpa, he said that if prying to your own faults, then you would be wise. Putowa also said, also as an ordinary being, it is the most important to give up your confusion for the benefit of sentient beings. Nowadays, we speak of benefiting sentient beings, and you think that it is something that you have to act out directly to benefit sentient beings. But as an ordinary being, if you don't look for the faults of the others, then you're already benefiting sentient beings. Whenever we look at the great masters, at times when others speak of the faults of the others, the great masters would then change topic because they don't want the others to make such a negative impact. So, as mundane beings, if you want to benefit sentient beings, you should then stop the faulty actions yourself and do not look for the faults of the others. Karapa also said, without conceiving of the faults of others, be aware of your own faults and give them up. And Shabopa explained, without realizing my own faults, even though they're big, I realize the faults of others, even though they're small. It is rather quite laughable. We sometimes have such great faults, but we don't see them. In such way, he would belittle himself. Furthermore, from Gyaltse Tokme himself, while not possessing the slightest quality of learnedness, righteousness, and excellence, you proudly boast of yourself as excellent. You do not see your own faults even though they're as huge as Mount Meru, but you see the faults of others even though they're as tiny as the dust motes. In Tibetan, we say that our own faults may be as big as a yak. We would not be able to see it, but we would be able to see others' faults as if we can see a tiny lice on others' face. That's exactly what Bodhisattva himself said, that you see others' faults, even though they may be as tiny as a dust mote, but not your own, maybe as big as Mount Mirror. You keep the benefit for yourself in your heart, but say that you're performing the benefit of others. Having disguised yourself as a Dharma practitioner, you accomplish only arrogance in this life. Never having examined your past behavior, you're just fooling yourself. This is a teaching that Gyaltsen Tokme told himself. We ourselves could learn from the great masters such as him, and we can scold ourselves in such a way by pointing out that the others are really perfect, but I myself are full of faults. This is the teaching of 37 practices of Bodhisattva. Maybe it's a little too long, but I think this is such an important teaching. We need to learn to stop looking at the faults of the others, not to speak of the faults of the others. This is practice.